Good morning, everyone. At least it's morning here in the far north above the Arctic Circle at the Little Bear Meditation Center. Polaris is quite high in the sky when you can see it, and on a clear night, the northern lights are really starting to come out. This is our 17th. It is a Dissipation of Glamour Initiative webinar, and we are continuing at first with readings in the book Glamour, A World Problem. Fascinating book, and really written for the group, the second group, the trained observers. You know, DK was training these groups of 9 starting in the early 30s. I think the first group was pulled together, the telepathic communicators, in 1931, and then he began to add the other groups afterwards, and they persisted for quite a while, as far as he could get, I think until later in 1939, and in 1940 he revised everything due to the situation in the war and created this seed group of 24. Anyway, a book came out of this, out of their instructions, and that's what we are reading at this time. Let's have just a moment of concentration where we realize we are all working together to create a magnetic aura. We are in each other's presence, and it's a question of being impressed by the clear thoughts which emanate from the realm of the soul. And sometimes from the realm of the intuition, either via those parts of our soul apparatus which are responsive to the intuition, or via the antakarana, for a more direct impact upon the soul-infusing personality. So we'll be doing our meditation for the dissipation of glamour, especially the kind of separativeness and hatred that is rampant in the world today, and which is inclining people to make decisions on a personal basis rather than on a far-sighted basis, which is better for their nation and better for the community of nations. In times of disturbance, as when the 6th and 7th ray are clashing, one going out, one coming in, the fear response is often the result. And that causes people to retract. And rather than face the world expansively and inclusively, they retract into a lesser definition of themselves. And together we seek to subjectively do something about that, according to Master DK's instructions. And so we work together, and we'll just quietly sound the Om as we study a few things and then get into our ongoing world glamour meditation. We are studying at the moment, however, in this section on the technique of light, we're also studying the dissipation of individual glamour. The two are absolutely interrelated. We have to realize we cannot work with world glamour until we can see the veils, somewhat see the veils which are preventing us from seeing reality, and that's the individual process. And so the Om to confirm our work together. We had been talking here about, we're on page 205, but I have made a few inserts here which I think are of interest. A process of recognition of the glamour, focusing the light, dissipating the glamour, and consequent revelation. That's what we've been talking about. We also had some interesting statements about the dweller on the threshold a time or two ago, and I mentioned that it was a very interesting DK's view of the dweller and the relationship of the soul in incarnation to that dweller. I have here a little bit of a review, which I think is worth considering. It's a little bit of the history of the subject, and then we'll move on. We'll move on in the reading, if we get that far. He tells us on page 41 of the Glamour book that a dawning sense of Maya arose in Lemurian days. But there was no real glamour and illusion because there was no substantially emotional or mental focus. Even the emotional focus was tied in with the fulfillment of the instinctual life based upon the appetites of the physical body. And so until we could detach desire from those types of promptings, we could not have real glamour. That came in more in Atlantean days. Glamour arose in early Atlantean times, and probably he calls early Atlantean times 10 million, 12 million years ago. And it coincided, I think, with the time that the moon chain humanity was transported into the earth chain for continuing development. Illusion arose among advanced human beings in later Atlantean days, and will be a controlling factor in our Aryan race. You know, we might simply say it's wrong thinking, and DK, the Buddha, tried to clarify all the different ways that we use the thinking apparatus incorrectly and the mistaken notions in which we find ourselves. Now this, I think, is very interesting, and a point that I wanted to make, that the dweller on the threshold, or this opposition to the unveiling of reality as it is, the dweller on the threshold arrives at full potency at the end of this present Aryan race. And in the lives of all initiates prior to the third initiation, DK talks about a tremendous battle that takes place. He gives us different planets that are active at the time of these initiations, and Mars and the Moon are active here. And Mars represents the desire nature, and the Moon, I believe, is veiling the planet Vulcan, which is full of will and full of light, and can overcome those emotional tendencies which tend to create glamour. So we'll have a little more to say here about this dweller. It's quite interesting to keep in the back of your mind as we're reading the different approaches to the dissipation of glamour. The subhuman kingdoms in nature are free of glamour and illusion, but are immersed in the world Maya, which is the, well, sometimes DK calls Maya that unthinking emotional mess. Quite interesting words, unthinking emotional mess, but we're talking about the chaos of energies and the lack of regulation of energies according to the divine plan. That's the kind of thing in which the lower kingdoms are immersed. Now, this is a very interesting idea here and tells us something about the past and the future in our attempt to dissipate glamour. Certainly the great teachers of the East and West, the Buddha and the Christ, made their attempt and will continue. The Buddha and his 900 arhats, notice that he was, that's in a way a symbolic number, he was surrounded by people of quite high development, many others as well, but certainly he was teaching those who were at the fourth initiation or thereabouts. The Buddha and his 900 arhats struck the first blow at world glamour when he promulgated his four noble truths, which, you know, tell us about suffering in the world and our desire for the world and the way to release ourselves from the suffering through ourselves from desire for life on the lower 18 subplanes. The Christ struck the second blow with his teaching of the nature of individual responsibility and of brotherhood. And there is a third blow to be struck, and we who are, you know, let us say, members of the new group of world servers, or inclined to be so, are working under the inspiration of the sign Taurus, which is a lumen sign and which is related to that beam of light and related to the unfettered enlightenment of Shambhala. It's got a lot of Venus connected with it, and therefore connected with the fifth ray as well through the planet Venus. So focusing that beam of light is what the new group of world servers must do, and they must focus it on all manner of human enterprise according to the work of the 7 ashrams. So the next blow will be struck by the new group of world servers, presumably. We're all working to be part of that, acting under the direction of Christ and his disciples. And we realize that the masters of the wisdom are actually the disciples of the Christ. So at the time of the reappearance and beyond, we understand that a great blow will be struck against world glamour, and it's not yet the case. Symbolically described, these Christ and his disciples, symbolically described as Christ and his 9,000 initiates. Not arhats, okay, but it's coming closer to humanity, and the number is increasing. So the 4 keynotes to the solution of the problem of glamour, we have to stimulate the intuition, okay, intuition, followed by illumination, followed by inspiration, and followed by a relationship with the presence of the solar angel within our egoic lotus, which we call the angel of the presence. And different signs are involved here. Sagittarius is an intuitive sign. Scorpio is responsible for the illuminative aspect of meditation. Inspiration, again, Sagittarius. We have to see, you know, and in this sign, Sagittarius so much connected with the ajna center. The intuition as well relates to the Buddhic plane, and we as a group of monads are finding our expression, I mean all of humanity, is really under Scorpio and expressing as monads on the plane of intuition. So when we arrive at the plane of intuition and can actually process intuition, we will begin to see clearly, and the miasmas and glamours in which we habitually walk will be dissipated. And finally, the angel of the presence, which is, in a way, what we are on the higher mental plane, and we assume identification with that great being. It is no longer veiled, and we discover that we ourselves are that being stimulated by the solar angel. I sometimes think of the angel of the presence as that which veils ourselves as a monad. It is kind of an extension of the monad, fed by the actual solar angel, which is a huge, a great being, who is already an initiate of all human degrees, let us say, having been to the star Sirius or to that system for training. So these are the things we have to, the mind alone won't do it, but it certainly will help. And that beam of light through which we understand glamour and its effects will be very useful, and then come the higher types of realizations which dissipate it altogether. So stage by stage, now this is going on to another place, and I think you'll find it quite interesting. This is a little bit later in the book, closer to where we are now. Stage by stage, the man has progressed from one stage of illusion or glamour to another, from one point of discriminative opportunity to another, until he has developed in himself the three major capacities. And you've got to notice the way these three major capacities are related to the technique of the presence, the technique of light, and the technique of indifference. Only not in that order. The first one should have been, the first one is Maya, the capacity to handle force. Once we do that, we overcome the more technical meaning of the word Maya, which is the chaos of energies which drive us in all kinds of directions and make us a victim of these energies rather than one who can direct them in line with the plan. The capacity to tread the middle way between the pairs of opposites, well, the pairs of opposites are usually considered to be vertical. And the verticality of them really is the soul and personality. And so in order to live the life in the 18 lower subplanes, our lower three worlds, we have to manage them, and we have to also be in line with the soul. That's the middle way, we might say. We cannot ignore our monadic task of redeeming the lower subplanes, the lower 18 subplanes. So we learn how to tread that way, and that relates to the dissipation of glamour. And then the capacity to use the intuition is particularly related to the dispelling of illusion. So we're moving along, and we have opportunities at every point to either thin the veils or lift the veils or destroy the veils or rend the veils, as the Christ did and as St. Paul did and as Moses did, rending of the veils until we can. These capacities he developed by resolving the pairs of opposites on the physical, astral, and lower mental plane, the cooperation between soul and personality as expressed on all these planes. And this is really interesting. He's going to deal with the dweller on the threshold now. Now he faces his climaxing resolution. Equipped with these powers, he becomes aware of those two great and, notice the word apparently, two great and apparently opposing entities, with both of whom he finds himself consciously identified. In other words, we human beings, we're at this stage, we're identified as the personality, which is quite highly developed by this time, and we're increasingly identified with ourselves on the higher mental plane, and we call this soul identification. So he finds himself consciously identified with these two opposing entities. To be a human being is to be in the middle of a battle, and the battle is causing all kinds of dust and smoke and turmoil and unclarity and, in generally, a confused situation, a glamorous situation. These two entities, the angel of the presence and the dweller on the threshold. And behind the angel, which is that disk of golden light, hidden by a disk of golden light, we're told in the Gayatri, The central spiritual sun, the true spiritual sun, is hidden by a disk of golden light. Our true monad is hidden by the angel. Behind the angel, he dimly senses not another duality, but a great identity, a living unity, which, for lack of a better word, we call the presence, or we call it the monad. And actually, we are the presence. We are the observer. You know, when the observer is present, it's really the monad who is present in all different degrees of attenuation and encapsulation. We are, you know, whatever kind of consciousness we have, we are the monad, and gradually we realize the fullness of the monad. One aspect of the monad is called personality, another is called soul, and finally we reach the monad, or the presence, on its own plane, and that's just the beginning of a great trip, a great a journey, outward-bound journey or inward-bound journey, an adventure on the way of higher evolution. He then discovers that the way out in this case is not the method of handling force or leaving behind both pairs of opposites or of right recognition through the intuition, but that this dweller and the angel must be brought together. Now, this is what we're trying to do on our planet. You know, in a way, the dweller on the threshold is the apex of the third aspect of divinity, and the soul is the apex of the second aspect of divinity. And how interesting it is that on our particular planet, we have a second-ray soul and a third-ray personality. And our big job on this planet is to bring the second and third ray together. So whenever we human beings are able to bring the dweller on the threshold and what we are as the angel together, we are fulfilling our planetary function, and the second and third aspects are being merged, as is the requirement at this time of human evolution. The lower entity, it says, must be blotted out in the light or forced to disappear within the radiance. In a way, the lower entity becomes then the sub-ray of the soul, an instrument of the soul. This is the task of the higher of the two entities with which the disciple, or really the initiate, consciously and deliberately identifies himself, and with this process we'll deal later. This is the problem which faces the initiate before he takes the final 3 initiations. And I wonder what he means by that. Maybe he means initiation 3, 4, and 5, or maybe he means 5, 6, and 7. But I think it's an earlier process, because he stops by talking about the 5th initiation here. You must bear in mind that none of these 3 stages are in reality. That is, you know, handling force, walking between the pairs of opposites, and keeping your Libran balance so you don't distort things and see things clearly, and then the coming of the intuition to dispel illusion. None of these things is really divided off from each other by clear lines of demarcation, nor do they follow each other in a clear sequence. Interesting, right? Life is much more organic and simultaneous than purely, in a Saturnian way, sequential. They proceed with much overlapping and often with a partial simultaneity. It is only when the disciple faces certain initiations that he awakens to the fact of these distinctions. And now this is what I thought you might be very interested in, because I hinted at this a couple of weeks ago. And we don't usually have a very technically clear understanding of our relationship between this opposition within ourselves, which we call the dweller, and the various phases that we go through in relation to the dweller. But then who are we anyway? Are we the dweller, or are we the angel, or are we both, you see? We have to begin to realize we are both. So I'm not going to elaborate on these a great deal, except that probably we may not have been aware of how far this dweller process really goes. So here we go. In the first initiation, the disciple demonstrates that he has resolved the dualities of the physical plane and can rightly impose etheric energy, the higher of the two, upon the physical energy. Well, you know, We're no longer strictly subject to the forces of the previous solar system, and which are unprincipled with respect to our second ray solar system at this time. And instead we cultivate the etheric body, which can indeed receive, is one of the principles, and can receive the higher principles, and impose that on the tendencies of the previous solar system as exemplified in our dense physical body. So we get control of ourselves physically, and the strictly physical appetites no longer run away with us. Okay, so that's what we demonstrate there. In the second initiation, which is, I think, something that's so important for so many of us, whether it's in this life or the next or the next or the next, it's the coming initiation for many people who are working with the DK method of understanding. Basically, he says, the book Esoteric Psychology is written for initiates of the first degree. Well, it's written for the majority of the students of Master DK. In the second initiation, the initiate demonstrates that he can choose between the pairs of opposites and proceed with decision. Notice all these Libras, how important Libra is in the dissipation of glamour in order to see clearly, in balance, and without distortion. So that he can proceed with decision, that's Saturn for you, upon the middle way, in which he does not abandon the personality, nor ignore the soul, but tries to bring the two into harmonious relationships. And this requires a clear seeing of the truth, if this is, possible, without distortion. Now, I always try to think about harmlessness in relation to Leo, to Libra, and he talks about, a balanced point of view being so important in this idea of harmlessness and divine understanding. There are three of them there, and I'll have to pull them up. Now, in the third initiation, this is where the angel of the presence starts to get involved. And please be aware that in your book Esoteric Psychology 2, there are some marvelous stanzas from the old commentary about this stage for every one of the seven rays. The angel of the presence represents a very, very important stage, and he gives us 7 methods of blending with the angel of the presence, and it involves all the chakras. I've done some commentaries on this, and you can find them on Makara under the angel of the presence. In the third initiation, the initiate can employ the intuition for the right perception of truth. And in that initiation, now notice this, how we often talk glibly about the dweller on the threshold as if we're on very familiar terms with the dweller. It's not the case. At that initiation, he catches the first real glimpse of the dweller on the threshold and the angel of the presence. We may occasionally see negative aspects of ourselves, aspects of the dweller. I like the joke, you see a tooth here, a claw here, a fang there. You see little parts of your negativity, but you don't see the whole thing at once. And here at the third degree, we begin to see what the dweller looks like as a whole, and its relation to the higher aspect of ourself, which we can now consciously begin to see, and not just in the state of initiation, in the initiation chamber, where so often we forget what we have seen when we descend back into personal consciousness. Now, you might think it was all over here at the third degree, but it's not. And, in the future, we can ponder about the implications of these next 2 sentences. In the fourth initiation, long time for most of us, I would say, the initiate demonstrates his ability to produce complete at-one-ment between the higher and lower aspect of the soul in manifestation, and sees the dweller on the threshold merge with the angel of the presence. Now that is such a fantastic statement, and it has to do with the Buddhic plane, and we have learned, in studying the Deva Kingdom, where we have these courses in the Morya Federation about that, the 60 series of courses, that there's a lot of opposition between the angelic and human kingdom on the astral plane, but they reach a degree of real harmony on the Buddhic plane. And when we're talking about the fourth initiation, it is the Buddhic plane, because that's the initiation which releases you onto the Buddhic plane, and so a whole new relationship begins to exist between what we call man and what we call the angel kingdom. So there is this final blending, merging, and so forth. And then something very interesting is said at the fifth, and it's beyond us to understand, but okay, we'll give it a try. In the fifth initiation, and here words fail to express the truth, he now by this time he's an extremely soul-infused personality, really able to focus in the causal body at will. Well, the causal body is gone. He's actually something, almost the monad, coming up to the monad. He sees the dweller on the threshold, the angel, and the presence merge into a divine synthesis. It's such a beautiful thought, and it gives us an objective towards which to work. The three aspects, the monad, the triad, because really the causal body is gone at this point, and the soul ends up, soul consciousness ends up being the triad, and the what is ever left of the personality is probably a Maya Varupa in a sense. It all merges, all three aspects merge together, 1, 2, and 3, and that's the story of our conflict with negativity as we move from the early days of the Lemurian consciousness, which deals with Maya and the control of forces, into the control of desire and the resolution of glamour, so that we no longer desire that which is unreal, lead us from the unreal to the real, and then finally lead us from death to immortality. And this is what happens as we in these final stages 4 and 5. Now, I did kind of I know that it's a little bit of a insertion here, you might say, but we had been dealing with some of these things, and I wanted to review them to have a general overall look at what these possibilities were before going on. I think in our next session now, there is the possibility, I'm going to put this in here like so, just to make sure that that I recorded myself, because I always end up forgetting where I am. Okay, so this is the end of Dissipation of Glamour webinar number 17, at least the reading part of it, right? And this was, today was the 30th. Now, there's been, we've had a death in the family, and we're not sure that we're going to be able to broadcast next Friday. But we will, it would be in the evening, 5 p.m. GMT, and if for any reason it's not possible, we will inform you of that. That may also be the case for the Wednesday broadcast on Triangles, because Tuija and I will be on a train, a long train ride from the north to the south. But maybe the reappearance of the Christ, we will be able to do that, hopefully, on next Thursday night. We'll just have to let you know on a case-by-case basis, because sometimes these things come up, and they have to be handled in the right way. Okay, friends, so that's going to be our reading for today, and it's very, well, it's pretty profound, I think. Not that we can understand all this, but at least we can get a start as we gradually overcome every aspect of our own negativity and our own elemental nature, become a soul-infused being, and finally become a monadically soul-infused projection, or Maya Varupa, at the fifth initiation, which is the case for most, maybe not all. I guess Master DK was using an old body and not a Mayavarupa, at least for a while. We don't know what condition he's in at this present time, but he was one of those masters who took the fifth initiation in 1875. Interestingly enough, at the time that the Theosophical Society was formed, and he retained that vehicle as far as we know, but what is the case at the present time, we do not know. All right, so now this is our opportunity for offering any questions we may have, any comments we may have, and like I say, if you've been thinking about other things, you don't have to only stick to our subject right here. You may have been pondering about different aspects of glamour according to our previous programs, and you can bring those up as well if you wish. So the floor is now open. Brett will help me detect questions or comments if I don't see them in time. Okay, so any thoughts if you wish? Okay, and here's Tuija, and go ahead, Tuija.
Yes, good morning to
there
everybody. Am I hearing? Okay, so I was just thinking this may be very difficult but interesting question of the dweller, in that sense that when we normally think about the lower self and the lower things within us, all kinds of bad qualities, negativities, whatever you may mention, but what about so-called good qualities? I was thinking while we were reading about the story of Gandhi and what DK said about him in that glamour that we have in the larger groups about peace, how the peace should be attained, how it is the resisting to whatever kind of violent action, but how he was telling that Gandhi was expressing the uncompromising fanatical attitude, which was not realistic. And that question in relationship to glamours, which are rooted in our false idea or false vision, how we see and how we approach in life. How to catch those things in us, these deep-rooted things that very often they are related to sixth ray, our the focus where we may be focusing in higher sense in life, in our spiritual directions. How to see those, how to catch those within us.
Yes, you know, it's often our virtues which, if carried too far, can turn into vices within the context of the immediate situation. Gandhi was very interesting. You know, I think he was a blend of the first and the sixth ray, and he had a huge amount of Libra in his chart, and also the incredible ability to fight with Scorpio, but he fought in a nonviolent way. But, you know, it was a place where a decision had to be made, and interestingly enough, the entire hierarchy chose to support one side in the great battle between humanity's dweller and angel. See, that's what the war really was. It started back in Atlantean days, and then it continued, and DK said even the same individuals were involved in leadership positions as in the Atlantean War 4 million years ago. So, you know, obviously the things that Gandhi was promoting are considered to be great virtues in many respects, you know, non-violence, kindness, all these things. But in the situation, he probably did not see with the hierarchical perspective how seriously threatened humanity was. So, you know, and what you brought up, Tuija, is important, because I have mentioned it before but want to mention it again, the dweller on the threshold is not all bad. In other words, when we purify and perfect the personality until it has all kinds of potencies, it is still the dweller on the threshold, because it has not made that transition from the third aspect of divinity into the second. So even our virtues can get in the way. This is astonishing. When you look at in the Bible, I always quote this thing, but you know, the rich young man was an initiate of the third degree, filled with virtue, and he had to go sadly away from the demand of the Christ to sell everything he owned and give it to the poor, give the money to the poor, and follow the Christ. Even his virtues got in the way. So when we are analyzing our particular difficulties, it's not only the negativities, it's the way that certain of our highly developed qualities, which could be quite useful, might get in the way of a still deeper relation with the hierarchy. So thanks for bringing that up. I think it's an important issue. Okay, other thoughts, friends? Other questions, other thoughts? If you have any, you're most welcome to offer them. We will go on next time with the dissipation of individual glamour, the way he's presenting it, and then we'll come back to the technique of the presence, which involves, of course, the intuition and is a rather high thing. But first we have to learn how to use the light, I believe. Other thoughts, anybody? Other questions? I know it's a little bit of it's a demanding section, this thing, because it raises us to the higher initiations and how we will deal with the positive and negative in our life. Go ahead again, Tuija. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this, how TK says about the actions. And now we just take it as an example, nothing blaming or putting any negative thoughts upon Kanti, because we all have those issues within us. But I was thinking about those words, how he was putting that, how he was acting in that moment. It was not realistic. And I was looking at how to find that point within us that we could stay in that point, that to see realistically into life, because I thought that maybe that is exactly the point into that more difficult issue when we have those virtues, and then we have several thought layers within us and feeling layers within us when we think that now we are really great, now we have really done something. But what about in that eye looking in us, into us, that was that realistic what we were doing? How to see this and how to keep that all the time? Or would there be, of course our meditations are some of the methods how we can cultivate within us, but what could be other things? What are your thoughts, people, that how do you find within yourself this kind of method that you are able to see deep and see more realistically what should be done when we have these glamours of ourselves that we are good or we do something good, but maybe in the eyes of hierarchy it is, not
it's always a higher, I think it's always a higher perspective, and the masters are tremendous realists. This is what, when you think about how much the fifth ray, the ray of realism, you might say, along with the seventh, is used in the dissipation of glamour. It's our whole method with the technique of light. And you find that the fifth ray souls today, working in the area of physics, are revealing more and more about the nature of light. Now, when it comes to illusion, we use a different ray. We use the fourth ray. But when it comes to glamour, this issue of realism is extremely important. And so many disciples have been raised on the sixth ray. And DK tells us, that over the past 2,000 years, it's been very important for raising up disciples to a higher standard of values. However, the sixth ray often lacks common sense. and common sense, the ability to synthesize all the senses, is realism. So I guess we have to, before we can be extremely useful, is to be as realistic as possible. And what's interesting is that the sign of initiation in astrology is above all Capricorn. And Capricorn, I would say, is one of the most realistic of the signs. We can have aspirations. There is such thing as the veil of aspiration, the glamour of aspiration. We can have high ideals, but until we can see with real clarity what the issues are, with actual realism, we're not going to be effective initiates. So are there any thoughts here from those who have not? Okay, wait a second. We seem to have a question from Rebecca.
Yes.
Okay, I got that one. Okay, so you say, thank you, Tuija and Michael, for following up my question about the dweller. How we glibly believe we know what it is. Yes, it's been said the dweller knows us better than we. That's a good one. The dweller knows us better than we know ourselves. Well, we come to this issue of who are we really after all. We have different stages of identification. We have, at times we think we're one thing. At times we think we are another. And we have to come to the realization that we are all of these things simultaneously, but ultimately to synthesize the whole thing, which eventually at the fifth initiation becomes a practical reality, we have to realize that we are the being itself. We are the monad at different stages of immersion in what we call matter. And every different stage, we call it a different name, but it's only one being, and that's what we are. And increasingly, we get released into the realization of what that one being is and what that one being can see and identify with. That's the whole path of evolution. Right now, we say, oh, well, I'm the personality, or, well, I'm the disciple between the personality and the soul. Well, I'm the soul on its own plane. Well, maybe I'm the spiritual triad after all. Well, finally, I'm the monad. And it turns out that in terms of identity, we are all of these things simultaneously and vastly more until, with the Buddha and the Christ, we can realize ourselves as pure being. And that's just the beginning of the adventure of universal mastery. Until, I'm going to say this, it sounds a little bit inflated, but look, until we can master the universe, we are not home. And what that means is that not just a tiny little emanation, we withdraw and become, as we always have been, greater and greater beings until we are the one being whose expression is the entire universe. And of course, that's the climax of every universe. All beings return to being the universal logos. So we're on our way, and when we realize ourselves to be the monad, that is just the beginning of the divine adventure on the way of higher evolution to other planets and to other star systems and to the Pleiades and beyond. It's very exciting, and it will take a long time in illusory time before that can really happen for such as we are at this present time. But the adventure is great, and we've been through it not only many times, but forever, and that's a great mystery with every universe, with every cyclic appearance of a universe, as the secret doctrine tells us. Okay, so, right, Rebecca, thank you. And any other thoughts or questions that you might have? Anyone? Look, it's not only that we are only dealing with what is before us in the reading. The reading is very important. Obviously, D.K. wrote these things. They're of tremendous illuminative value. But cumulatively, we develop an understanding of the process in which we are engaged. And so questions may arise just related to the whole process and to your thinking about glamour. And during our question and discussion session, before the actual dissipation meditation, then we can bring those things up if you wish. If you wish. Excuse me. Anyway, do read in the book. Okay, wait. Okay, I see. Carl? Yep, go ahead, Carl.
Yes, in relationship to Tuija's question in dealing with virtues and applying those virtues in a reasonable way, I couldn't help but think of the aspect of love wisdom at its relationship to virtues. Everything must be used, those virtues must be used in a way that reason prevails. Not too much, not too little.
Very, very good point. It's about, it's about what we call the quality of the Buddhic plane. We call it pure reason, or we call it inclusive reason, or we call it the blending of wisdom and love. So, sometimes DK has to instruct his students. He say, look, you're too much on the wisdom line. You're too much on the love line. You need wisdom. And, and he's talking to second-rate types. And as we learned earlier, that the sixth ray is extremely important in the dissipation of glamour, but the job is finished off by the second-ray types. And they have to have the wisdom along with the love, so things are held in balance. And, that we get back to Libra again, don't we? Because that's the sign of balance, and that's where we're able to somehow adjust our wisdom tendencies and our love tendencies so we are really effective in the world according to the plan. So thanks for that thought, Carl. Appreciate that. And, okay, we'll go on. Frederick, go ahead. Is it a question, or do you wish to speak?
Yes, I can speak. Yes, good morning. Gratitude for this inspirative teaching. I was wondering if this, the different skill we may have, or we could have, or we will have, the purpose isn't it to help others at different levels? From low level to higher level, so we can be adaptive and we can understand different level.
Yes. Just, look, all of us are trying to be of use to other people. So many of us are somehow on the second ray line one way or another, and we are trying to evoke, draw forth the higher self of other people. And when I think about your question and how we can use our skills, I think of one thing. I think that people need to know themselves. This is what the study of the seven rays and esoteric astrology can give us. And, DK has a profound knowledge of the human being. And one of the greatest services we can offer anybody, of course, it's up to you finally. It's up to the individual. Nobody's going to know you for you, as it were. If we can give them the methods of learning their own true energy nature and their purpose and their tendencies that have to be expressed in any one life, then I think we're doing such people a great favor. In other words, we're training ourselves as observers. We are the trained observers. We're, the second group. And at the same time, we are observing other people very carefully from their personal perspective, from their soul perspective. And if we can give the hints and give the methods and give the understanding of helping them see themselves as they really are, then know thyself and thou shalt know the world. I think that's one way that students of DK can really be extremely useful. Other thoughts, Frederick?
So I was still thinking that even, of course, it will take time and we are ongoing students. We might be already understanding a little bit ourselves, so that's why we can experience
Exactly.
Every day.
Exactly.
Every
it's
sense.
Not that, look, I mean, we don't know another person like the Master does, but we know a little. And we can help other people see themselves in a way that is much more expansive than their present view, which is usually rather egoistic. I'm thinking about people's self-image, what they think they are, where they think they're going, where they think they came from. If these things can be adjusted, then a true help to the soul in incarnation is given. And I'm sure when we have our conversations with people, you know, whoever they may be, in a tactful way, in a, you know, an intelligent way, a loving way, we try to say the things that will lead to a little bit more light. Just the way the Master, when he's writing his letters to us, he says those things which somehow open the doors. He sees much more than we do. So we can take what little we have and shed the light on those who maybe have less light about themselves and about the world. I think that's how we can help. And of course, if we clear the glamours out of our aura, or at least, you know, a large number of them, will be that much more useful, and we will not mislead other people. Because it's possible to be a teacher, you know, and mislead others. It's the story of Bucyrus in Gemini, you know, the labors of Hercules. The third test, he came in contact with the great teacher Bucyrus, who was actually taking away his perception and taking away his own understanding of himself, and making him loyal to the teacher and not loyal to the truth. So we have a big job. Okay, well, thank you, Frederick, for your thought on that. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts or questions, friends? Okay, Tuija again, please go ahead.
Yeah, just continuation to this question. I think motive is one of key things also to realize or check that or contemplate within us whenever we take any action, to see what is our motive, why we would be doing something if we would be doing.
You know, the interesting thing is that the masters check our motives. It's not so much whether we have succeeded with blazing glory in our attempts, that helps too, but they check our motives when we undertake something. And it's possible to have good results using bad motives and bad results using good motives, but eventually good results with good motives will be what characterizes us. And who can search the motive? You have to search your own, obviously. It's not so easy to know in another individual what is the motive. You have to take care of your own motives. What is the vision which animates you as you leap into action? What are you trying to achieve? Okay, and let's see, we have a couple more questions here, or statements. And let's see, Nicholas, okay, hold on. And there you go, Nick. Okay.
Recently, my attention was to my attention came the word Tibetan is using indweller. He's using it several times and implying that the indweller is the soul. And from this perspective, it seems that we have two dwellers, and probably this is giving a clue to the meaning of the fourth statement in our screen right now about the fourth initiation and the lower aspect of the soul and the higher aspect of the soul. It is quite possible that we can see the dweller and the indweller as the higher and the lower aspect of the soul. I don't know if it is it is a sort of misunderstanding of mine, but it was very interesting to notice that wording, indweller.
Yeah, I think there's a good point there. You know, as the soul in incarnation, we are the indweller. Of course, look, you know, like I say, take it far enough, and you are the monad in extension. The monad in extension is the real indweller, and as we learn more and more about it, it becomes a greater and greater being. The reason that he calls, as far as I know, the reason he calls the dweller on the threshold the dweller is because this being, this personality, this lower elemental self, seems to present itself always at the threshold of greater light, love, and power. So it remains, it stands on the threshold of greater revelation. So it's not dwelling in anything so much as it's dwelling in front of the doorway of revelation. But the indweller, I think, is a very interesting concept. It represents the angel of the presence and the solar angel within our consciousness, because those beings are also indwelling the general sphere of human consciousness, but it also represents what we are as a different monad, if I can use such a strange term, when we as that monad in extension indwell the lower personal spheres. So in a way, we have two indwellers. It's what we are within the field of the personality, all the way from our highest being, and it's this other being which manifests itself within our causal body and egoic lotus, and within our normal consciousness. It also is indwelling the field of human consciousness. So two indwellers are found, and one of them at the fourth initiation wings its way back to its source, and we are left with the realization that we are really the angel of the presence ourselves. So it gets a little, these fusing and blending. The study of consciousness is so interesting because it doesn't have barriers. It can permeate and go through and mix and blend with other consciousnesses. And so you can have more than one indweller. That's why we're said to be sometime an outpost of the Master's consciousness. The Master's consciousness is in us, and we have our own consciousness as well. Two types of consciousness are fusing into one. So interesting word, indweller. I agree with you on that. It's to be researched, absolutely. Okay, Tuija, go ahead.
Right, I was just thinking about this, how the consciousness is related to secondary, and the form of it is spherical. So we have several spheres within us, and there are like the points of consciousness. And always in the periphery of that sphere, there is this trust, the more how to say, more concrete, or more the lower substance of that sphere. And that is always related to the elemental life. So the elemental life has its own consciousness, and we are building all the time also the vehicle for our consciousness using those elementals. And that is about what DK talks about, the purification, how in every life the disciples, and of course the whole humanity, but especially disciples, should be conscious of that, how to build for oneself the better vehicles. We also have the betterment for our vehicles in this life, but for the next life, to consciously build these better substances within us, so that when we are born again, then our vehicles can carry more of the spiritual life within itself. And that is very interesting question about this, the consciousness, from where it is coming.
Mm. Yeah, this whole thing about consciousness, there are types of yoga. Well, look, it's almost time now for us to do our meditation, but I would just say there's only one consciousness. And we have to get used to that idea that all these separations in consciousness are simply the result of the limitation of the apparently separated parts. But at a certain altitude, a certain intensity, a certain point of tension, there is but one consciousness with many, many different levels of expression and of reception. So there are types of yoga whereby you learn how to enter the consciousness of another. The Christ had it. He knew what was in man. There were no barriers. He had so much Neptune. He could absolutely pervade any apparent ring pass knot and not only be in the consciousness of the other, but be the consciousness of the other. And when Master DK says, you should be an outpost of my consciousness, etc., he's doing the same kind of yoga. He is not limited by the rings pass knot, which usually block the consciousness because of the quality of the substance, usually block the consciousness from penetrating and entering into and identifying with the consciousness of another. So more and more Neptune will be part of our training, which will allow us to slip beyond our normal ring pass knot and enter into the consciousness of whatever, whether it's the subhuman kingdoms, another human being, or a still higher being, as in the state of contemplation, where we merge with the consciousness of the higher angel. This is a whole area of consciousness studies, and it's very, very subtle, and it relates to the cultivation of the intuition, and we'll be able to do that more and more when we get rid of our causal body. This is not an overnight kind of thing, but the causal body, for all of its wonderful riches, is a temporary veil and limitation upon still more spiritual intimacy. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I know we could go on for quite a while. I have in mind somehow that I want to undertake for the group more discussion of DK's books, in an ongoing way, so we can, enter simultaneously into a number of the books and simply read them through carefully together and discuss the implications. We can do this in webinar form, and some of it can be done in broadcast form. Something is cooking in our minds here with Tuija and me, and we'll do our best to present an ongoing presentation of DK's work, all in the attempt to assimilate as much as possible in the next 9 years before the year 2025 as may be possible. Because he basically tells us, I really can't give you more until you have assimilated what I have given you. Of course, he's going to give more, and it's impossible to assimilate everything, but we can do a much better job of assimilating this vast, spherical, comprehensive teaching than we have so far done, and I think we can work together to do that, just the way we're working in the Glamour book and with the appropriate meditations. So now I think it's going to be time. Yes, it's going to be time for us to work in the dissipation of world glamour. So put yourself on self-mute, it would be best. And we will continue with our work here with these two very destructive approaches. It's really the glamour of hatred resulting from the great heresy of separativeness, which is both an illusion and a glamour, resulting in a glamour. So here we are, 27, good number, 27 of us here altogether. And that's exactly the number of those who participate in the advanced esoteric schools. 24 students and 3 guides or leaders or teachers, whatever you want to call them. So we'll have a few moments together of silence, thinking of each other, all of us involved in all the different places, thinking of ourselves as on the plane of soul. We are souls together. We are in that elevated consciousness of light, love, and spiritual sacrificial power. And in the silence we come together. We are an instrument, willingly offering ourselves to be used to help clarify the astral plane, the kama-manasic body also of humanity. And we work steadily with the faith that using the Tibetans' formulas, simple formula maybe, we will be of some value in helping to purify the desire nature of humanity. So, and I found that in making the sign of the cross here with the forehead, the chest, and the left eye, and then the right eye, the first two gestures can be done with the first sentence, the left eye with the next sentence, and the right eye with the final sentence. So we say together this protective formula, and we do need the protection. We must be in this respect and realize we're dealing with forces which can overcome us if we're not alert. So we begin and try to make this a little okay. So, as a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Think about what you just said. So we stand within the light, firmly within the light, in the faith that we will not be touched by the darkness of glamour. There is a dual light, and the light of matter and the light of mind. So we focus these. We draw up the light found in the etheric, physical, and astral planes. We imagine that light. We draw it up to the plane of mind. It meets the light of mind on the plane of mind. And we imaginatively contact the soul, as if the light above our head, one way to envision this. We recognize the quality of soul light. The illuminating light, the clarifying light, the light of love, the light of sacrifice. We come en rapport with soul light, recognizing its reality. And we're going to bring these three together In our imagination, we fuse the light of matter, the light of the lower mind, and then the soul light. We fuse them all together on the plane of mind, imaginatively. And a triple light is formed, 3 lights as one, and we say together, the light is one, and in that light we shall see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. We realize there is a relation between this triple light and the forthcoming light of intuition. In this triple light we shall see the light of the intuition on the Buddhic plane, which we will increasingly use. And then we use the formula, which we say together as a group, realizing that we are a group instrument. This is not so much about our own individual work with individual glamour. This is group work, and we say, radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And our searchlight goes out onto the astral plane, our group searchlight. As we call down the higher energies and turn the darkness of the fogs of the astral plane into clarity, so that the day of revelation may shine forth. And then we will add now the strengthening which comes through the invocation of the spiritual will. We call upon the spiritual will from our sacrifice petals, from the will synthesis petal in the inner group, from the jewel in the lotus, and especially from the atmic plane, the plane of spiritual will. This is a plane where the will of God really begins to be known, and finally, from the monad itself, where the will of God, our planetary logos, as it applies to the cosmic physical plane, is known. We call in the strengthening of spiritual will. And we realize that this spiritual will strengthens our group beam, projecting out there, in there, onto the astral plane, amidst the fogs and swirls of glamour, but a strengthened beam. And we say together, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Our goal is the dissipation of the glamour of hatred and separativeness. So we throw the light upon those glamours, upon the fogs, upon the distortions which those glamours represent. And as we say these words of power, we watch the work being done. Our will the clouds, revealing the sun, symbolic of reality and the truth. We say together, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred and separativeness. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. And we continue our visualization of the empowered group beam doing this work, penetrating the glamour, producing its weakening and dissipation, preventing the appearance, negating the quality, destroying the life. And we continue to do this in the silence for 5 minutes. The group beam, empowered, dissipates, dissolves, evaporates. The clouds of glamour and the sun of reality shines. Together, then, we withdraw the beam back to the mental plane. And as it were, we take attention away from that previous work. We turn the beam off, the searchlight of the soul, as Master DK says, is shut off. And some little bit of dissipation, dispersal, negation of these obstructive arrangements of force has been accomplished. And acknowledging that, we sound the Om together 3 times. Okay, thank you, friends. We will continue our work in the AM. Tomorrow, some readings from the Destiny of the Nations and work with soul of our country. And then on Sunday, the Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes. Next week, because we have travels and family commitments, it will be an irregular schedule. We will not be able, I think, to do the triangles meditation on Wednesday. I think we'll be on a train. On Thursday, we will attempt the reappearance of the Christ. That'll be a PM, 5 p.m. GMT. And we'll see, hopefully, yes, Tuija? Yes?
I think it could work the next Friday. The morning time would work. If we would start.
Well, okay, then we'll just have to, we'll have to send some information out to everybody. Tuija suggests that for Glamour next time, since we will be with family due to a death in the family, we will be with them in the PM. Maybe we can do the morning time. That's a possibility, and we will send you out notification of this. So join us. Okay, well, and then we will do our best to continue after that, but it is for us an unusual week of travel and responsibility. We'll do our best. Thank you, everyone, for being here and working on this. It is subtle work, okay, but DK promises us that it is effective work. We don't look for immediate results. We continue to work subjectively, realizing that the outer will rearrange itself according to the geometric quality of the inner, and that's what we are supporting. So many blessings to everybody. Olivia, Tuija, and I have been sponsoring this particular approach to dissipation of glamour. There are a number of other groups who are doing the same thing, and we wish them all well in their undertakings. Let us persist and clarify our consciousness, and that of humanity, of course, inevitably as a eventual result. Best to everybody, and see you soon. Bye-bye.